They always told me to keep the lights on. Even as a boy, I thought it was strange. My friends were taught to lock their doors, look both ways before crossing the street, never talk to strangers. But in my house, the rule was simpler and more urgent. Never let the lights go out. And now, 20 years later, I'm back in that same house, and the lights are already flickering. The road into Hollow's Edge is narrower than I remember, swallowed by trees that bend toward the asphalt like they're trying to hide the town from the world. The houses are spread far apart, and the air is thicker, quieter than it should be. Even the birds seem to hold their breath here. I park in front of the old house. The paint is peeling, the roof is sagging, weeds have claimed the walkway. The porch swing creaks gently, even though there's no wind. It's the kind of house that doesn't welcome you back. It watches. I step out of the car and slam the door. The sound echoes too loud in the stillness. The sky above is overcast, heavy and low, as if it knows what waits inside. The front door sticks before it groans open. The smell hits me, dust, wood rot and something else. Something, electrical, like burnt wires. I flick the light switch. The bulb overhead blinks once, twice. Then it hums to life. I stare at it for a long second. That old feeling creeps into my chest. A pressure, like something just remembered. The air inside the house is stale. My footsteps echo on the wooden floor. Everything is exactly where it used to be. The crooked picture frames, the worn couch with a blanket still draped across it, the dusty table where my parents used to drink their tea at night. A forgotten mug still sits there. A ring of dried-up tea clings to the bottom. It hasn't moved in years. I move through the hallway slowly, like I'm afraid the walls might move. Each room feels smaller than I remember, like the house has curled in on itself. The kitchen, the dining room, the narrow staircase leading to the bedrooms upstairs. I stop at the foot of the stairs. That's where I heard the whispers as a child. I shake the memory loose and head upstairs. Each step groans under my weight. The light bulb above the landing sputters and then goes out completely. I stop. My hand reaches for my phone flashlight out of instinct. But then I remember, I don't need it yet. Not while the other lights are still on. My old bedroom is the first door on the right. I open it slowly. Time has frozen inside. Posters still cling to the walls, their edges curled and yellowed. My old desk is covered in notebooks and broken pens. The bed is made, like someone was waiting for me to come back. But no one ever comes back to Hollow's Edge. Not unless they have to. I sit on the edge of the bed, run my hand over the quilt my mother made. The silence grows heavier. I reach over to the nightstand lamp and flip it on. Nothing. The bulb is dead. Or maybe something else. A chill runs up my spine. I glance toward the hallway, where the overhead light still glows faintly. Keep the lights on, Robert. I hear it again. Not aloud, but not imagined either. A memory. My mother's voice, sharp and trembling. I was 5. The house had lost power in a storm, and I'd cried when the flashlight died. I remember her clutching me close in the dark, whispering over and over, "Don't let the dark touch you. Keep the lights on, always." I always thought she was scared of something that wasn't real. Now I'm not so sure. Downstairs, the front door creaks. It's still open. I thought I closed it. No breeze, no draft, just open. I walk back down and shut it tight, lock it. Then I stand there, listening, nothing. And then, just barely, I hear it. A click, like a switch. I turn. The hallway light is off. The house is dark again, and I'm not alone. I woke up with a start. The room was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your ears and presses in. It wasn't the kind of silence I remembered from childhood. Back then, this house used to hum. The buzz of the kitchen light, the distant sound of my parents' TV, the old pipes whining just before the heat kicked in. Now it was just empty, hollow. I got out of bed, rubbing my eyes. The floorboards groaned beneath my feet like they were complaining about being walked on again after all these years. The air smelled like old paper and damp wood. It had that scent of a place left untouched, like time had paused inside these walls while the rest of the world moved on. I decided to clean. Not because I cared about the dust, but because it kept me moving, kept my mind from thinking too much. As I worked my way into the upstairs hallway, I noticed something strange. The wallpaper by the old linen closet was peeling, just a little at the corner, like it had been scratched at. Maybe from age, or maybe from someone, or something else. I leaned in. There were marks underneath, tiny lines scratched into the wall beneath the paper. At first I thought they were cracks, but when I pulled the paper back further I realized they were drawings. Childlike, stick figures. One figure was larger than the rest and drawn with a red crayon or something that had long since faded. It had no eyes, just two dark circles, scribbled over again and again until the paper tore. The figures around it, smaller ones, had tiny X's for eyes. All of them. Dozens. I froze. A chill ran down my spine. There was something written underneath. The words were shaky, like someone had scrawled them in a rush. He sees in the dark. Don't let it get dark. I stepped back, suddenly aware of how dim the hallway had become. The light above flickered, just once. I stared at it, heart beginning to race. I didn't want to admit it, but I was scared. My chest felt tight, like I was being watched. I told myself it was just the drawings, just old, weird stuff. My parents had been eccentric, maybe even paranoid. Still, I ran downstairs and grabbed a flashlight from the toolbox in the laundry room. When I came back, I ripped more of the wallpaper away. The drawings stretched across the entire wall, dozens of scenes. Some looked like people running, others hiding. One showed a room, this hallway maybe, with someone lying on the floor and a tall, crooked figure standing over them. Always the same figure, no eyes, no face, just tall and wrong, and always in red. I took a step back. My hand was trembling. Then the hallway light flickered again and died. Complete darkness swallowed the space. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I clicked on the flashlight. The beam shook as much as my hands did. The light revealed the hallway, but it didn't feel like enough. Like the darkness was heavier now, pressing in on all sides. That's when I heard it. A soft creak. Not from the floorboard I was standing on, but from the far end of the hallway, like someone had just shifted their weight. "Hello?" I whispered. No answer. The flashlight dimmed for a second. My heart skipped. I turned back toward the staircase, but I stopped. For just a second, I thought I saw something at the end of the hallway. A shape. Still, watching. But when I pointed the light straight at it, nothing. Just wallpaper, half torn, and shadows. I didn't sleep that night. I kept every light in the house on, and for the first time in a long time, I started to wonder if my parents had been right. Maybe there was something in the dark, something that waited, something that remembered. The diner sat on the corner of Main and Ashwood, barely lit by a flickering neon sign that hummed like a dying insect. The word diner blinked red against the night sky, and the windows were clouded with years of grease and silence. It hadn't changed much since I was a kid, and somehow that made it worse. I pushed the door open, and the bell above it gave a weak jingle. The smell of burnt coffee and old oil wrapped around me. A few people sat at scattered tables, hunched over their plates like they were trying not to be noticed. I walked in, but nobody looked up. Nobody greeted me. The woman behind the counter glanced up for just a second before lowering her gaze. She didn't smile. I slid onto a stool. "Coffee?" she asked without emotion. "Yeah, black." She poured it without another word. I could feel eyes on me now, but no one met my gaze. It was like they recognized me, or worse, remembered something they wished they hadn't. I stirred my coffee, watching the dark swirl inside the cup. I didn't know why I'd come here. Maybe I just wanted to feel like something was still normal. Maybe I was searching for someone to talk to, someone who would tell me my parents were just paranoid and the house wasn't cursed. I didn't get that. Instead, an old woman sat down beside me. I hadn't seen her walk in. She wore a faded green coat with too many buttons, and her hair was twisted into a tight silver bun. Her eyes were cloudy but sharp. She smelled like damp earth. "You're Robert," she said. It wasn't a question. I looked at her slowly. "Yeah, and you are?" "Names don't matter much anymore," she said, tapping her thin fingers on the counter. Her nails were chipped, stained with something dark. "But I knew your mother. Long time ago." I stayed quiet. She used to come here sometimes, before the light in her eyes went out. "What do you mean?" I asked. She turned her head toward me. "I mean she carried something heavy, heavier than fear. She was the only one who remembered what most of us chose to forget." "Remembered what?" The woman leaned in, close enough that I could see the yellowing of her teeth. "The shadow in your house. The thing that listens when the lights go out, Alfonso." My hands tensed around the cup. My stomach dropped. "You know about him?" I asked, voice low. "I know enough to stay away," she whispered. "He doesn't like the light. That's why your parents kept it on, even during the day, even when the sun was out. It wasn't just a habit, it was survival." I tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. "Are you saying there's something living in the dark?" "No," she said. "I'm saying something waits in the dark. Lives? No. But waits? Always. And your house feeds it." I didn't answer. My fingers felt cold despite the hot coffee in my hands. She reached into her coat pocket and slid something onto the counter. A flashlight. Old, scratched, taped in places where it looked like it had been broken and fixed more than once. "Take it," she said. I stared at it. "It's just a flashlight." She looked at me like I was a fool. "It's a warning." I picked it up. The weight of it was strange, too heavy for something so small. "Thank you," I said, unsure what else to say. She stood up. "Don't thank me. Just remember what I said. If you start seeing things in the corners, hearing voices that sound like your own." Her voice dropped even lower. "Don't trust the dark. He speaks through it." I turned to look at her again, but she was already halfway across the diner, disappearing into the shadows near the exit. The woman behind the counter still hadn't said another word. The other patrons sat frozen in place, chewing in slow, nervous silence. It was like the air had gone thick. I finished the coffee in one long gulp, not because I wanted to, but because I suddenly needed to leave. As I stepped outside, the wind hit me with a sharp chill. I looked down at the flashlight in my hand. It was old, faded, but something about it felt alive, like it had seen things and refused to forget them, just like my mother. I got into the car, started the engine and headed back to the house, and for the first time in my life I was afraid of the night. Not because it was dark, but because now I understood why the lights mattered. The house groaned again. I stood in the middle of the hallway, staring at the faded blueprint in my hands. My father's handwriting was rushed, but still readable. He had drawn the layout of every room, every hall, every closet. But what caught my eye were the red circles he'd marked. Some rooms were labelled safe, others had nothing at all, just blank space, like he hadn't dared to define them. I glanced up at the hallway light, which flickered once, then twice. I didn't wait for the third. I moved quickly into the kitchen, one of the rooms circled on the blueprint. As I stepped inside, the air shifted. Not warmer, just less cold, less tense. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. Something was happening in that house. And whatever it was, it didn't like the dark. I sat at the old kitchen table, spreading out the map and a notebook I'd found in a drawer earlier. My mother's writing this time. She'd written the same sentence over and over again. Light remembers. Darkness devours. The flashlight beside me buzzed as if it wanted to say something. I picked it up and shined it toward the hallway I'd just come from. Nothing. Just the still silence and the door creaking slightly in its frame. I swallowed hard and stood up. The blueprint marked the guest room as another safe zone. I hadn't gone in there yet. The door had been shut since the day I arrived. I thought maybe it was just filled with old junk or memories I didn't want to face. But now, I needed to know. I needed to see if these safe zones really meant something, or if my parents had just lost their minds. I opened the kitchen door and stepped back into the hallway. The air was different now. Heavy, almost wet, like breathing through a soaked cloth. I clicked the flashlight on again and moved toward the guest room. Halfway there, I felt it. A sudden, sharp cold on the back of my neck, like invisible fingers brushing the skin. I froze. I didn't turn around. I didn't even breathe. Then I heard it, just beneath the hum of the old wiring and the soft creaks of the floorboards. Breathing. Slow, measured, not mine. It was behind me. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and walked faster. The light flickered once. No, not now. I slapped the flashlight and it held steady. I reached the guest room door, shoved it open and slipped inside. I slammed it shut and leaned against it, just like I had in the kitchen. The temperature rose immediately. Not warm, but not freezing like the hallway. Safe. I turned and looked around the room. Everything was covered in white sheets, furniture, a rocking chair, a dusty dresser. There were no lights in here except for a lamp in the corner. I moved toward it, flipped the switch. Nothing. I twisted the bulb. It sparked to life with a weak yellow glow. The shadows shrank back a little. I took in a shaky breath. And that's when I saw it. In the mirror across the room, it showed me standing by the lamp, flashlight in one hand, blueprint in the other. But the reflection didn't match. Because in the mirror, I wasn't alone. There was a figure standing directly behind me. Tall, too tall. Its head nearly brushed the ceiling and its limbs were far too long, blacker than shadow, like it had been carved out of the dark itself. Its face was empty, just a long slit where a mouth should be. My real body spun around, nothing there. I looked back at the mirror. The figure was gone. But the cold had returned, and this time it was inside the room. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just slowly backed toward the lamp, knelt down beside the outlet and whispered, "Please work." I flipped the plug to the emergency bulb I'd brought from the kitchen. The lamp brightened, white light this time, and then the cold faded, just like that. Gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the mirror, waiting for it to come back. But it didn't. That was when I started to believe. The lights weren't just for comfort. They were the only thing keeping me alive. I didn't sleep that night. After what I saw in the mirror, whatever that thing was, I stayed in the living room with every light in the house turned on. The ceiling fan creaked above me like it might fall off. The old bulbs hummed, glowing yellow and hot. My eyes stung from staring too long at nothing, but I couldn't look away. Because I knew it was there, somewhere in the shadows, waiting. It wasn't just paranoia, I heard it. The first time it was soft, a whisper, almost like a breeze brushing past my ear. "Robert." I froze. I didn't imagine it. I know I didn't. My heart pounded sharp and fast. I spun around. No one was there. The hallway was empty. The door was shut, but I still heard it. "Robert, turn the lights off." No way. I backed into the corner of the room, pressing my body against the wall like that would protect me. My hands trembled as I reached for the flashlight I had left on the table earlier. I clicked it on, even though the room was already fully lit. I needed something solid in my hand, something to aim at the dark. I scanned the corners, the baseboards, the ceiling, nothing. And then I heard it again, louder this time, not a whisper, a voice. My voice. It sounded exactly like me. "Robert," it called from the hallway. "Come see something." I couldn't move. My knees felt like they'd snap if I tried. That voice, it wasn't just mimicking how I speak, it was me. Same tone, same rhythm, same hesitation. Like someone had recorded me and was playing it back through the walls. "Robert, I have your memories." My breath caught in my throat. I thought about the journals, the safe zones, my parents' desperate notes. I thought about the way the electrician looked at the house like it had teeth. I wasn't safe. The lights wouldn't hold forever. I grabbed duct tape and flashlights from the emergency kit and strapped one to each forearm. It felt stupid, like something a kid would do. But I needed light on me at all times. The whispering stopped after that, at least for a while. I tried to close my eyes, just to rest them. But the moment my eyelids fell shut, I saw that thing's outline behind them. It had no face, just a silhouette shaped like a man. Stretched unnaturally tall, like it had to fold to fit in the hallway, and its eyes red and dim, like coals waiting to reignite. I snapped my eyes open. The bulb above me flickered once, twice. I held my breath, then silence. Nothing happened. I laughed nervously, feeling the edge of panic roll back just slightly. And then, from behind the couch, just inches away, "Robert, why did you leave me in the dark?" I screamed, louder than I ever had in my life. I scrambled off the couch, hitting my knee on the corner of the coffee table hard enough to bleed. I pointed both flashlights toward the sound, the beams slicing through the air like twin swords. But no one was there. Just an empty, quiet room. The smell of burnt wires crept in again. That strange metallic scent like the house was cooking from the inside. I stood there, panting, shaking, as the lights above me buzzed like flies before they die. That's when I realized it. This wasn't random. It wasn't just a haunted house. Something inside the dark wanted me to turn off the lights. And it was learning how to talk. The wind howled outside like it was angry with the house. Rain battered the windows and the branches of the old oak scraped against the siding like nails on a coffin lid. I stood in the hallway, staring at the same patch of wall I'd been drawn to for the past hour. There was something about it. A strange chill clung to that one section like it was hiding a secret. The wallpaper peeled slightly at the edges, and the faint smell of wax and mildew lingered in the air. My parents had always warned me never to tear into the house. Some things should stay buried, my mother once said, but something inside me whispered louder tonight. A voice I wasn't sure was my own. I took a crowbar from the old toolbox in the garage and returned to the spot. My hand trembled as I slid the metal edge under the soft plaster. One pull, then another. The wood beneath groaned in protest, like it remembered what had been hidden there. Behind the wall was a small hollow space, about the size of a child's closet, and inside was a room I had never seen. A room made of candle wax and shadows. Melted candles lined every corner, their wax long dried and yellowed. Drawings covered the walls, childish, rough, frantic. Figures drawn in crayon. One of them was clearly a little boy, smiling. Next to him stood something else, taller, with long arms and hollow circles for eyes. The figure had no face, but it watched. I felt sick. On the floor, half covered by an old ragged blanket, was a small bundle. Bones, tiny, fragile, tied together with string and surrounded by dried flowers and burnt-out matches. I backed away, breath caught in my throat. That's when I saw the book, a leather-bound journal, half buried beneath the dusty blanket. I picked it up with shaking hands. The first page was in my father's handwriting, faded but clear. If you're reading this, then Alfonso is waking up again, and I'm sorry. I dropped to my knees and turned the pages slowly. Each one was worse than the last. My father had documented everything, how the thing they called Alfonso came from the dark, how it wasn't a man, not really, something older. It fed on memories, on silence, on being forgotten. It had taken my brother. I froze. My brother? I kept reading. There were notes from my mother too. She wrote about how they made a deal, light for silence. As long as the lights stayed on, Alfonso stayed in the walls. But if the house ever went dark again, he would come back, and he would finish what he started. And that's why they never let the lights go out. That's why they left me the house, with all the bulbs, batteries, and flashlights stocked to the ceiling. I turned to the last page, a single sentence in red ink. If the lights fail, run, or give him what he wants. I didn't hear the lights die behind me. I only felt the cold. It hit like a breath down the back of my neck. And then the whisper came, right next to my ear. Robert. I turned slowly, the journal clutched in my hand like it could protect me. There was nothing there, but the candles had started to relight themselves, one by one, not with flames, but with a low blue glow, like the heat of something not human. Then I saw it. In the corner of the secret room, crouched in shadow, was a shape, long, still, watching, and then it moved. I ran. I didn't sleep that night. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses down on you, like something is watching, waiting. Every time I shut my eyes, I heard the faint sound of breathing that wasn't mine. I stayed in the living room, sitting with my back against the couch, flashlight in hand, knees pulled up to my chest like a kid afraid of monsters. But I wasn't afraid of monsters. I was afraid of what I was starting to remember. By morning, the storm hadn't stopped. Rain tapped on the windows like fingers. The sky was still dark, and even though it was daytime, the house looked like it was stuck in permanent dusk. I turned on every flashlight I had left and walked into the hallway. The floor creaked beneath me. I passed by the old family photos lined on the wall. I'd seen them 100 times. My mom and dad, young and smiling. Me, as a kid, always in the middle. Sometimes holding a toy. Sometimes wearing those bright yellow overalls I used to love. But something pulled at me. A strange feeling that something was wrong. I stepped closer. One of the photos caught my eye. It was taken in the backyard. My dad held a birthday cake and I stood next to him wearing a paper crown. But there was a gap on the left side of the photo, just enough space where someone could have stood. I leaned in. There were smudges there, scratches. I moved to the next photo. This one was inside the kitchen. Mom was decorating a gingerbread house. I was laughing at the table. But again, another gap. Same spot, same scratches. It was like someone had been erased. I felt a chill crawl up my back. I ran to the attic. There was an old chest up there that I hadn't opened in years. Dust flew as I pried it open. Inside were drawings I'd made as a child. Crayon scribbles, stick figures, weird monsters. But one drawing made my stomach drop. It was me. And someone else. 2 stick figures holding hands. One said Robert, the other said E. I stared at it for a long time. My hands began to shake. E. Who was E? That night, I couldn't sit still. I paced through the house like a madman, opening every drawer, every closet, tearing through storage boxes. I found more drawings, more photos, and they all had the same pattern: scratches, gaps, erased pieces. Then, in the guest room closet, I found an old shoebox sealed with duct tape. I ripped it open. Inside were photos, originals, untouched. And there he was, a boy, just a little older than me, same dark hair, same nose. In some pictures, we were sitting together on the swing in the yard. In one, he was blowing out candles on a birthday cake, 7 candles. On the back of the photo in my mother's handwriting, it said, Ethan, 7th birthday. I sat down on the floor, heart pounding. Ethan, my brother. I didn't even remember him. Not his face, not his voice, not the sound of his laugh. Nothing. He had been part of my life once, and now it was like he never existed. My mother's journal came back to me. One line in particular: "We must keep the lights on. Not just to see, but to remember." A whisper brushed past my ear. "You're starting to see now, aren't you?" I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the room. Nothing. No one. But the air had changed. It was heavier, and in that moment I knew something for certain. Alfonso didn't just feed on fear, he fed on memory. And in the dark he had taken my brother, and if I wasn't careful, I would be next. I woke up to silence. Not the calm kind, but the kind that presses against your ears like cotton, thick, unnatural, heavy with warning. The house was darker than usual. I reached for the lamp beside my bed and flipped the switch. Nothing. I tried the flashlight I kept on the nightstand. Dead. My chest tightened as I reached for the backup one in the drawer. It flickered once, then dimmed to a useless glow before going out completely. No power, no backup, no light. I got up, stumbling through the hallway with my phone screen as my only guide. The battery was at 5%. The air felt different, charged, like it was holding its breath. The hardwood floor creaked with every step, each groan echoing through the old house like a warning I was too stupid to listen to. In the living room, I tried the light switch again. Nothing. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the front window and looked outside. The street lamps were off. So were the houses across the street. Not even a flicker of movement in the dark. The entire town was out. I grabbed my jacket and headed to the front door, but as I reached for the knob, it refused to turn. I jiggled it harder, then tried the deadbolt. Stuck. No. Locked. From the outside. My parents' house had no smart locks, no strange tech, just the old brass knob and the chain they never used. But now something had locked me in. The moment I realized that, the storm hit. It started with a low rumble, like the earth itself was clearing its throat. Then the thunder cracked, close enough to shake the windows. A second later, rain pelted the house like nails. The wind howled, not like wind, but like something alive, something furious and hungry. Lightning flashed, and for a heartbeat, the entire room lit up. In that flash, I saw him, Alfonso, standing in the far corner of the living room near the fireplace. His body was long and crooked, bent like he didn't belong in this world. His head tilted to one side, too far. His face, it wasn't really a face, more like a shadow pretending to have one. But his eyes, oh God. His eyes were wide white, glowing faintly with a cruel kind of joy, and then darkness again. I backed away, heart pounding so hard I thought it might tear through my ribs. I held the phone in front of me. 4%. I swiped it open and used the flashlight, aiming it toward the corner. Empty. Gone. No footsteps, no sound. Just the storm outside and the rising panic inside me. I ran to the kitchen and opened every drawer, every cabinet. I found 3 candles and a lighter in the junk drawer. Hands shaking, I lit one and placed it on the table. The tiny flame did its best to push back the shadows creeping along the walls. The light made me feel better, even if it was weak. Then the flame shivered. Not because of the wind, but like it was afraid. I stared at it, not blinking. The flame bent sideways as if something invisible passed close to it. Then the second candle went out. The third flickered and I lunged for it, cupping it with my hands. I whispered, begged it to stay lit. Please, please don't go out. But it did. And when the last candle died, I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Not close. Above me. Upstairs. Long, slow, deliberate breaths, like someone savouring each inhale. I grabbed the lighter, flicked it again and again, but it refused to catch. My hands were wet with sweat. The storm screamed outside, and in here I was no longer alone. The shadows moved. They reached across the walls like hands, crawling, stretching toward me. And in the darkness, Alfonso whispered, not with his voice, but with mine. "Turn it off, Robert. Let me in." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, gripping the useless lighter until my fingers went numb. The storm raged on, but the real terror wasn't outside. It was in the silence that came between the thunder. In that silence, I learned something I'll never forget. It's not the dark that's dangerous. It's what waits inside it. I don't remember falling asleep. One moment I was staring at the dim orange glow of a candle in the hallway, and the next I woke up in pitch black. My heart kicked against my ribs like it wanted to escape. The candle was out. I scrambled to my feet, knocking over a chair. My hand fumbled along the wall until I found the flashlight I had duct-taped to the doorway. Click. Nothing. I shook it, smacked it, begged it. Still nothing. The air around me felt full, like someone else was breathing right next to me. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound. Then I heard it. My voice. But it wasn't coming from me. "Robert," it whispered, soft, slow, too calm. "You're starting to remember, aren't you?" "No," I whispered back. "You're not real." A low chuckle echoed down the hallway. It came from every direction. It sounded too much like my father's laugh, too much like the tapes I used to listen to as a kid. "I've always been real. You're the one who forgot," the voice said. "They made you forget. They lied to protect you." I turned and ran, didn't care where, just somewhere with light. I burst into the living room, grabbed the old oil lantern and struck the flint. The flame caught. A small, shaky halo of light bloomed around me, and then I saw him. Standing just outside the circle of light, tall, wrong. His face was my face, but stretched. His arms too long, fingers bending in ways that made my stomach twist. His eyes were hollow, glowing faint red like the last embers of a dying fire. "Alfonso," I said. The name tasted like rust in my mouth. He grinned, or at least tried to. His face cracked at the corners like dry earth. "You remember," he said. "That's good. Now you're ready to hear the truth." I kept the lantern between us, my hand trembling. "What do you want?" He tilted his head, slow and deliberate. "A fair trade. Your parents made one. Now it's your turn." "What kind of trade?" He stepped forward, and the flame flickered. "Turn off the light, just for a moment, and I'll show you what they kept hidden. I'll show you your brother. I'll show you the truth behind the wall." My knees felt weak. I tightened my grip on the lantern. I remembered the photos, the empty spaces where another child should have been, the names scratched out in the journals. My parents crying behind closed doors, the way my mother flinched when the lights even flickered. There was someone else. There was another boy, and somehow I had forgotten. "You want me to turn off the light so you can kill me," I said. Alfonso's grin widened. "No, I want you to see, but yes, you may not like what you see." He stepped back, melting into the shadows, but I still felt him there, just past the reach of the light, waiting, watching, tempting. I sat on the floor, clutching the lantern, heart hammering, sweat soaking through my shirt. The silence stretched, and then he spoke again, softer this time, as if he were right beside my ear. "You'll turn it off eventually, Robert, because curiosity is stronger than fear, and I know you want the truth." Then he was gone. I didn't sleep again that night. I just watched the flame, guarded it like my life depended on it, because now I knew it did. I didn't sleep that night. The wind outside screamed like something alive, clawing at the windows. Every corner of the house breathed with a darkness that wasn't just the absence of light. It wanted me. I could feel it watching, waiting. I sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by flickering candles and a pile of old, half-burned blueprints. My father had drawn them in thick black ink, with little notes scribbled in the margins. He was always quiet when I was a kid, always tired, always checking light bulbs and wiring. I used to think he was paranoid. Now I know he was just trying to keep us safe. One blueprint stood out. It had been hidden behind a loose panel in the hallway, taped to the back of an old picture frame. Unlike the others, this one was drawn in red ink. The lines were shaky, like he was in a rush or terrified. At the bottom, in large letters, he'd written, "The final lock. Do not open unless prepared to finish it." Finish what? The blueprint showed a part of the house I didn't recognize. It wasn't on any of the maps I'd found before. A staircase behind the pantry wall leading to a sealed basement chamber. It didn't make sense. I'd lived here most of my life. I knew this house, didn't I? I stood slowly, my knees aching, and grabbed the flashlight. It buzzed with a low hum. I only had one spare battery left. In the kitchen, the pantry stood silent. Dust covered the shelves, and spiderwebs stretched across cans of food that had expired years ago. I moved the shelves aside and knocked on the wall. Hollow. Heart thudding, I reached for the hammer and began to pull apart the wooden planks. Nails screeched as they came loose. Behind them was a narrow door, metal, cold to the touch. My breath fogged against it. There was no handle, just a deep groove down the middle. I pulled. The door groaned open, revealing a pitch-black staircase that seemed to fall forever. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. Step by step, I descended into the unknown. The walls closed in around me, and the deeper I went, the colder it got. My flashlight flickered, casting wild, shaking shadows. I tried not to look at them too long. Sometimes they moved the wrong way. At the bottom, I reached a door. Not just any door. This one was thick and rusted, with dozens of wires wrapped around it like veins. My father's handwriting was scratched into the wall beside it. Light is memory. Light is life. Do not fail. I pushed the door open. The room inside looked like something from a science fiction movie. Old, cracked monitors lined one wall. Dozens of industrial lights were bolted to the ceiling. In the center was a chair, more like a throne, connected to a control panel and wires that ran into the floor. Dust floated in the air like ash. The silence was absolute. I stepped forward and felt a shiver run through me. The floor was marked with symbols, the same ones I'd seen under the wallpaper upstairs. Protective runes? I don't know. All I knew was that they surrounded the chair like a cage. There was a journal on the panel. My father's. I flipped through it with shaking hands. Pages torn, ink smudged, but I read enough. They had built this room as a trap. A cage for Alfonso, a place of light so powerful it could lock him away. Maybe forever. But there was a catch. It needed a source, a living presence, a soul to power the system, keep the light burning. My mother had tried, but she was too weak. My father, he'd stayed just long enough to train the circuits to work on a heartbeat. The system had gone cold the day they died. Now Alfonso was free again. I stared at the chair, sat in it. It fit me perfectly. A whisper slithered through the room. My name, coming from nowhere and everywhere. Robert. I gripped the arms of the chair tightly. My flashlight buzzed once, then went out. The room dropped into total darkness, and he was there with me, but I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I now knew what I had to do. I had found the final lock, and I was prepared to finish it. I held my breath as I crouched in the hallway, the last flashlight in my hand shaking. The beam flickered, weaker now. Batteries dying, heart pounding. Alfonso was close. I could feel it, the way the air changed, how the shadows moved even when I didn't. He was always near when the light started to die. The whole house groaned as if it was alive and angry. Wind howled outside like it wanted to join the madness inside. Every door creaked. Every board of the old floor whispered with weight that wasn't mine. I looked at the wires running through the walls, some cut, others melted like wax. It was clear now. He was feeding off the power, sucking the energy straight from the walls. Hollow's edge was dark, and this house, it was a feast for him. I reached the basement door. My fingers hesitated on the knob. It was cold, too cold. I turned it anyway. The door moaned open. The stairs beneath groaned under my weight as I moved down. The flashlight dimmed again, barely more than a glow now. Each step deeper made the darkness feel thicker, like I was walking into black water. I found the light room, just like my father had drawn in his blueprint. Dozens of halogen bulbs lined the ceiling and walls, twisted wires everywhere. At the center, a tall glass box filled with coils and tubes. Written in shaky red letters on the wall, the final lock. The journal was still on the table where I'd left it. My father's words echoed in my mind. The trap needs a soul to close it, a willing one. Light doesn't just reveal him, it holds him, and the price is memory, self, life. I dropped the flashlight. It clattered on the floor and finally died. Total darkness, silence, then breath on my neck. You found it, Alfonso whispered, his voice like 1,000 of mine overlapping. Now choose. I turned slowly. He was there, not fully formed. His face flickered like a candle's flame. Parts of him were stretched too long, others too flat. His eyes, they burned with a pale light that pierced me. You always knew the truth, Robert. You just didn't want to see it. Your parents gave themselves to stop me, but you're the one I want. My voice was barely a whisper. Why me? Because you forgot, and those who forget are hollow, easy to fill, easy to wear. I stepped back, bumping into the control panel. I won't be your shell, I said. He laughed. The sound bent the air around us, then burned with the light. I slammed the switch. Nothing happened. Panic rushed through me. I slammed it again. Still nothing. He lunged. I did the only thing I could. I dove into the center of the coils, ripping the live wires free with my hands. Pain exploded through my body. The current surged into me, stealing breath, sight, and time. But the room exploded with light, white, blinding, pure. Alfonso screamed. He twisted, cracked, and folded into himself like smoke being sucked through a keyhole. The walls pulsed with power. Every bulb burst, every surface lit with a glow not from this world. I screamed too, not from pain, but from memory. It all came back. My brother, his face, his voice, how he vanished in this very room, how I stood in the corner watching and forgot. The light took more than my pain. It took me. My last thought was simple, quiet, and strange. At least I remembered before the end. And then, darkness. Not the kind that brings fear, the kind that feels like sleep, like peace, like the end of the story. I stood by the window, staring out at the house that once belonged to my family. It was a strange thing, how time changes the things that used to haunt you. The house looked different now. New coat of paint, fresh landscaping, and new windows that shone under the weak sunlight of the afternoon. But to me, it was still the same. I could still feel it, deep in my bones, the darkness that hid behind its walls, waiting for the right moment to return. A young couple walked around the yard, talking excitedly. The woman pointed at the porch swing, imagining how it would look in the evenings. I could hear their words from where I stood, though I wasn't really listening to them. Instead, my eyes kept drifting back to the house, its silent, suffocating presence looming over the yard like a ghost that refused to leave. It had been years since I'd last set foot in that house. Years since I had done what I did. The light traps, the sacrifice, the final choice I had made in that cold, dark basement. It was all a distant memory now, buried beneath layers of dust and time. Or so I thought. A voice broke my thoughts. You all right there? The real estate agent stood beside me, offering a polite but distant smile. You don't seem too enthusiastic. I glanced at him, his casual demeanor almost grating against the weight of what had happened in that house. Yeah, just remembering, I muttered, turning back to the house. The agent didn't push. He was used to people like me, those who returned to the past but never truly let go. The young couple walked past us, the woman trailing her fingers along the wrought iron gate that surrounded the yard. She smiled, talking to her partner about how perfect the house was. They didn't know what had happened there. They couldn't. I could tell from the look on the man's face that he was already picturing himself in the house, imagining how he would make it his own, how they would live in it, fill it with laughter and light. The agent followed their footsteps, gesturing for me to stay put. I'll show them around the back, he said, his voice soft. Give you a moment to take it all in. I nodded, but my gaze never left the house. My parents' warning echoed in my mind, louder than anything the agent or the couple could say. Never turn off the lights, Robert. Never forget the lights. The wind rustled the trees, a low, unsettling whisper. I glanced at the front door. Even now I could see the shadows behind the windows, like they were waiting, biding their time. It was just a flicker at first, a momentary disturbance. I brushed it off, thinking it was nothing, but then the lights in the front hall blinked. Once. Twice. Then a long pause, followed by a flicker. I froze. My heart thudded, a familiar pulse of dread that I hadn't felt in years. The agent hadn't mentioned anything about the electrical work. In fact, the house was supposed to be pristine. No problems. No dark corners where things were left to linger. The flicker came again. And then, the lights went out. A complete blackout. I stood there, frozen, watching the dark windows as if expecting something or someone to appear. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The young couple and the agent were at the back of the yard now. I could barely hear their voices through the heavy silence that had fallen over the house. I almost expected to see a figure in the window, staring back at me, but there was nothing. I should have walked away. I should have turned my back and never looked back. But something inside me wouldn't let me. I wanted to walk up to the door, see for myself. I wanted to know if it was really over. The lights flickered once more, so quickly this time that I wasn't sure if it was just my imagination, or maybe it was something else. Something older than me. Older than the house itself. Just don't forget to keep the lights on, my parents had always said, and now I understood why. I turned to leave, not wanting to face what was inside anymore. But then as I walked away, I heard the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open, and I couldn't help but look back. The lights flickered one last time. The shadows inside the house stretched longer than they should have, almost as if they were reaching for me. And that was when I knew. The house hadn't been cleaned up. The house hadn't been fixed. The house was waiting for the next person who didn't know better. The next person who would forget to keep the lights on. And I couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for them to figure out that some things never really go away. I walked off the property, the door behind me slowly creaking shut, but the house remained in my thoughts, just as it always would.